This Week with David Brinkley. Now from our Washington headquarters, here's David Brinkley.
It's all changing by the minute, but from our open line to the Philippines, here's what is happening now. There is a mutiny, military and civilian, against President Marcos and his government.
Hi, my name is Realiza Banal.
I'm Eunnel Marasigan. I'm Jan Paul Magculang.
We are here to discuss something.
Are you already familiar with the People Power Revolution?
If not, we are here to educate you about this topic.
So, what is the People Power Revolution?
The Philippines was praised worldwide in 1986, when the so-called bloodless revolution erupted, called EDSA People Powers Revolution. February 25, 1986, marked a significant national event that has been engraved in the hearts and minds of every Filipino. This part of Philippine history gives us a strong sense of pride, especially that other nations have attempted to emulate what we have shown the world of the true power of democracy. The true empowerment of democracy was exhibited in EDSA by its successful efforts to oust a tyrant by a demonstration without tolerance for violence and bloodshed. Prayers and rosaries strengthened by faith were the only weapons that the Filipinos used to recover their freedom from President Ferdinand Marcos's iron hands. The Epifanio de los Santos Avenue, or EDSA, stretches 54 kilometers, where the peaceful demonstration was held on that fateful day. It was a day that gathered all Filipinos in unity with courage and faith to prevail democracy in the country. It was the power of the people who assembled in EDSA that restored the democratic Philippines, ending the oppressive Marcos regime. Hence, it came to be known as the EDSA People Powers Revolution.
When did People Power Revolution occur? During Marcos's reign, the Philippines was marked by censorship, repression, corruption, and human rights violations. Marcos was accused of embezzling billions of dollars from the state treasury, and his regime was notorious for its brutality towards political opponents and journalists who criticized the government. The movement that led to the People Power Revolution began in late 1985, after Marcos called for snap elections to try to legitimize his rule. The opposition candidate, Corazon Aquino, emerged as a popular alternative to Marcos, and her campaign was supported by a broad coalition of groups and individuals who were seeking change. However, the election was plagued by fraud and violence, and Marcos was declared the winner. Aquino and her supporters refused to accept the results and called for peaceful protests and civil disobedience. The situation came to a head in February 1986, when Marcos ordered the arrest of Aquino's supporters and called out the military to suppress the protests. In response, millions of people took to the streets in Manila and other cities, creating a massive wave of popular resistance that paralyzed the country. The military split over whether to support Marcos or the people, and eventually, key figures in the armed forces, including General Fidel Ramos and Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile, defected to the opposition. The defections weakened Marcos's hold on power and emboldened the protesters, who continued to demand his resignation. On February 25, 1986, after several days of intense negotiations and protests, Marcos fled the country with his family and allies, and Aquino was inaugurated as president. The People Power Revolution was a triumph of nonviolence and peaceful resistance, and it inspired similar movements in other countries, such as South Korea, Taiwan, and Indonesia. Where did People Power Revolution occur? The People Power Revolution, also known as the EDSA Revolution, occurred primarily in the bustling capital city of Manila, located on the island of Luzon in the Philippines. This significant event in Philippine history also spread to other cities throughout the country, including Cebu, Davao, and Bacolod. The main site of the revolution was the Epifanio de los Santos Avenue, EDSA, a major highway in Metro Manila. Here, tens of thousands of people, including students, religious groups, and ordinary citizens, gathered along EDSA to protest against the government of Ferdinand Marcos. What began as peaceful protests soon transformed into a large-scale civil disobedience movement, with people blocking the highway and creating human barricades to prevent military tanks from advancing. The protesters also gathered at several key locations in Manila, including the Malacanang Palace, which was the official residence of the President of the Philippines, and the military bases where some military leaders had taken refuge.
You might be wondering, why did People Power Revolution occurred? Let us know why. Why did People Power Revolution occurred? Growing public dissatisfaction with President Ferdinand Marcos's administration, which had ruled the Philippines for more than 20 years, led to the start of the People Power Revolution, commonly known as the EDSA Revolution.
This People Power Revolution surprised and inspired anti-authoritarian activists around the world. Ferdinand Marcos had been president of the Philippines since 1965. After declaring martial law in 1972, he suspended and eventually rewrote the Philippine Constitution, curtailed civil liberties, and concentrated power in the executive branch and among his closest allies. Marcos had tens of thousands of opponents arrested and thousands tortured, killed, or disappeared.
Among other things, Marcos had been charged with extensive corruption, violating the rights of others, and engaging in electoral fraud. His government had also grown more oppressive and autocratic. People power revolutions occur when a significant portion of a population becomes discontent with their government or ruling authority and decides to take collective action to demand change.
Marcos's opponents weighed whether this was an opportunity or a trap. Many times before, Marcos had tipped the electoral balances in his favor through a rewriting of laws, outright violence, or other forms of manipulation and intimidation. Much of the Philippine left decided to boycott the election, fearful that participation would only serve to further legitimize the regime. The remainder of the opposition movement eventually coalesced around the widow of Senator Aquino, Corazon, or Cory Aquino. Just as many feared, Marcos claimed victory in the election, but this time, Filipinos refused to accept this lie.
The immediate trigger for the revolution was the disputed presidential election of 1986, in which Marcos was declared the winner over opposition leader Corazon Aquino, despite widespread allegations of fraud. Aquino and her supporters challenged the results and called for peaceful protests, which quickly grew in size and intensity.
For a moment, everything seemed possible. From February 22nd to 25th, 1986, hundreds of thousands of Filipinos gathered on Epifanio de los Santos Avenue to protest President Ferdinand Marcos and his claim that he had won re-election over Corazon Aquino.
The 1986 EDSA People Power Revolution gathered millions of Filipinos from all walks of life to march along Epifanio de los Santos Avenue, EDSA, the main artery of Metro Manila, to end the dictatorship of President Ferdinand Marcos and begin a new era marked by true freedom and democracy.
Soon, Marcos and his family were forced to abdicate power and leave the Philippines. Many were optimistic that the Philippines, finally rid of the dictator, would adopt policies to address the economic and social inequalities that had only increased under Marcos's 20-year rule.
That's all. I hope that you learned something from us. Again, I'm Realiza Banal.
I'm Jan Paul Magculang.
I'm Eunnel Marasigan.